Uh-oh. What am I doing? Oh, that's why.
You got to press the button.
This is the Okayest Hunter podcast. Never pass on shooter bucks, because that's just meat in the freezer. It's your tag, you hunt how you want. This is Okayest Hunter.
Hey, yo. This is the Okayest Hunter podcast, coming at you from all over southeastern Wisconsin. We're live. It's Tuesday night, 6:04 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you're listening, you wonder how you could watch live, you could head over to our YouTube. Check it out on Tuesdays at, like I said, 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, or right about there. Usually give or take a couple minutes. We jaw jack, technology breaks, whatever, that kind of stuff. So hop on over, check it out, and you can always call into the show as well, 262-757-4122. We'll put you in the queue. We have an auto attendant to screen your calls, so we know we're not getting pranked too hard. We do welcome a good prank every now and again, so keep it PG-13, and we'll let you do your thing. And we'll hover over
It happens.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Hall. My wife says hi. That's so nice of her.
Hi, Holly.
Hi.
Yeah, welcome to the show. We're here. We're doing it. I'm Eric. We got Derek back on the show here. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Life's been crazy. I'm like picking ground venison out of my fingers. The kids were just helping me upstairs. I got a whole pile of pork to grind and mix with some venison meat from the last hog hunting trip here. So the kids were just helping me grind some venison. So when we're done here, back to the grinder.
Nice.
Back to the grind, literally. Greg, what's doing your world, buddy?
A little bit of scouting, a little bit of walking around, getting back into doing some prep work for that awesome trip that we have planned in October. So putting miles on hiking boots, about to start walking more with a weighted pack, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, blacktail, huh?
Blacktail, baby.
Y'all are going to go. It's going to be a good time. I wish I could go with you. It's not going to happen for me. Just sending you two guys. I'll just be there in spirit.
I'll be there in spirit. We will think of you when we're pulling the trigger.
We'll make like a little Eric Clark, Okayest Hunter voodoo doll, but we'll only do good things to it. We'll like pour beer on it when something good happens.
Yes. I don't know, guys. Only doing good things with voodoo doll sounds a little sexual for me. I'm not sure if I like where
we can do whatever you want, man. You call the shots.
Speaking of pulling the trigger and shooting the shit, we are presented by Nosler, which we announced last week. So if you had missed last week's episode, you're just finally catching up and you didn't want to hear that when you're on this one. We do have a discount through Okayest Hunter for Nosler, which does bring their ammo down to, I think, below the price of what you'd pay for one of their competitive brands. Starts with an H and ends with a day. So if you're looking for a premier rifle round, heading over to Nosler, use code OHP, save 20%. We're trying to make ethics more affordable here when it comes to shooting the best that the biz has to offer. We got stuff coming from Latitude that'll I keep saying this every week, like they have stuff that they're working on. It's a lot of work to run those types of companies, product companies, supply chain, and so forth. But again, code OHP will save you some money there. Same thing with Spartan Forge. They're working tirelessly on Cyber Scout and promoting it. If you follow them on social media, you've probably seen what this thing can do to some degree. It's very impressive. So keep an eye out for that. Stay frosty is probably what Bill would say. And then Rack Hub, they're posting that unicorn thing. Did you guys see that? The unicorn? No? Well, they got a unicorn attachment for it. So if you want to put a unicorn horn on your stuff, there's an April Fool's thing they did. Oh, you gonna hang it up there, Derek?
I got two of them down here ready to put some sheds on. I just haven't had a chance to do it yet. And then yesterday, a good buddy of mine came over, and his two kids, who are younger than mine, were running around pretending these were little laser blasters, and they were coming awfully close to eyeballs. So I put them up on the counter there so they couldn't grab them, but they liked them.
That's pretty funny. Pew pew pew. Those are for antlers. No. So yeah, head on over to Rack Hub. I think if you do rackhub.com/OKSHunter, the discount will automatically pop up for you, or you can just type in the code OHP at checkout. But they got the RH one that I like because I don't have a lot of things to mount around here, but I had that one shed that I put on there. The RH2 is what you have, or if you have a match set, it doesn't even have to be a match set, I guess, but like preferably it probably would be.
Yeah, I think the way they have these spaced out, how you mount them, they're, about the width that they would be on the deer's head, and then you can adjust the angle according to what, look your sheds you think they had, which is pretty slick. You just turn it, adjust it, lock it in, and I think those hold a pretty good amount of weight.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and that was a hell of a design there. So I forgot to I do this every time, and now it's gone, so I can't get them the link. Well, classic. I messed it up again. Anywho, we do have a guest on the line with us, Luke Cox with Hunt, Lift, Eat. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah. So you guys you were like the brave ones. You decided to have us on your show first, which was a bold move, and I think it went fine. You'd have to tell me if your audience had a poor reaction to it or not, but I think it was good.
No, it was good, man. We ended up talking less about hunting and more about business, but I mean, I thought it was good, and surprisingly, our audience actually doesn't hate that. So I ended up talking a lot about entrepreneurship and mindset, and we kind of sprinkle it in. It's the Hunt, Lift, Eat podcast, but we talk about a lot of stuff, kind of whatever interests me or Carter or whoever's running it at the time.
Well, there's a lot of questions I have for you, and I'll do my best to stay out of the business realm, even though I don't know if our audience likes it or not. Just know that I do it all the time. So I just think I annoy everybody. So I probably just need to, maybe I should ask people. I don't know. Is that what you want to hear? Anyway, you just got out of the Army. You want to talk about your career in the Army and kind of how this idea came to be?
Yeah, for sure. So I joined the Army, contracted back when I was like 18, but I was a contracted ROTC cadet at Virginia Tech. It's kind of all I wanted to do was go be a soldier. My dad was career Army, so I never was like, oh, I'm going to be a fireman or an astronaut. I'm going to go be a soldier. Got into the Army, commissioned in 2013, and quickly realized it probably wasn't going to be for me long term. Turns out I've got a problem a little bit with authority, which is I think a lot of us in the entrepreneurship realm tend to have, not like a destructive one, but you think something silly or stupid and you're like, I could do this better. And a lot of that's just ignorance. Looking back, I was in the Army for about 11 years, and looking back, I made a lot of silly mistakes when I was younger, and a lot more ego involved and all that. So, but I commissioned as an infantry officer, went to the 101st at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, deployed a couple of times with them, then went on down to Fort Benning. I planned on getting out down there. I was a basic training company commander. It's kind of a place where a lot of folks go because on their way out, or they go there because they don't want to. But I volunteered to do it, so I didn't extend my obligation to the military. When we go to our professional schools, you then owe more time. And I was like, well, I'll just do this, get a little experience with command to pad a resume maybe. But when I was down there, I ended up kind of getting a second wind. Had a great chain of command. My first sergeant and I got along really well. I really enjoyed kind of what we were doing with training soldiers and teaching, coaching, mentoring, all that. But during that time, I found myself with some extra free time on my hands. I had started, as I was transitioning out of Fort Campbell, one of my buddies was getting out of the Army, Eric Bartell. He's one of the founders of Echelon Energy Drinks, but he had started an Instagram page for fitness, and the dude's ripped. So it's a lot easier for him than my chubby ass to get followers. But he started, leveraged into a job, essentially getting out of the military. And I was like, like there's something to this social media thing. And I didn't have a whole lot of interest in social. I had, probably my friends and family that followed me on Instagram. And if I'm being totally honest, I had made Instagram so Tinder girls knew I was real before I started dating my wife. And that was I didn't really buy into social media, but I realized that it's a tool. And I started building some content kind of around hunting and fitness, because that was the three things I did at the time. Was I hunted, I lifted, and I ate. I could have added drink on the end of it, but that seemed a little bit clunky. And so that was pretty much my life. And I was promoting a bunch of other brands. I was a brand rep kind of in the industry, doing that brand ambassador, field staff, pro staff thing. It's a lot of work, as you guys well know. Like, producing content gets really difficult, and I've gained a decent bit of traction. Nothing crazy, but I had, some followers, and I was like, well, this will be easy. I'll just start my own company. And, if I'm doing it for everybody else, I can do it for myself. Little did I know it's a lot harder than people might make it sound in the entrepreneurship space on Instagram and Facebook. But yeah, that's really how it started. I found myself with some extra time on my hands. We ended up having what's called a non-conduct on the military side, where we didn't pick up a cycle because of recruiting constraints. So I had like 10 weeks where we weren't doing much. And that was when I got on a government computer, built some clip art logos and designs, got an embroidery machine, taught myself how to sew, put patches on hats, and it kind of just grew from there. And I decided to stay in the Army and moved to Fort Carson. I did company command time there as a line commander. I deployed there to Eastern Europe, and that became really difficult. I was like reverse cycle. So I was waking up at 3 a.m. for business calls, trying to do meetings, do everything from Europe, manage and grow everything. But luckily I have a hell of a team who really rallied around me, and like Carter took over the podcast with one of our guys, Bobby, ran that full time because I tried to do it, but like from Europe with shitty internet, it just was not tenable at all. But yeah, we worked through it, and then I decided when I got back to go ahead and transition out. The Army had to screw me one last time. I tried to get out from Colorado Springs at Fort Carson, where I was stationed, and my family was kind of established and settled, and they moved me down to Louisiana. I left the family there, went down to Louisiana for about a year, but just transitioned out. I'm technically still in. I'm on terminal leave, but I'm done. DD-214 in hand, actually as of like 2 weeks ago. So it's pretty recent. But yeah, that's kind of the rundown on the military. But yeah, starting a company while active duty is definitely difficult. A lot of conflicting time. I would wake up at 4 a.m, prep orders, get orders, ready to go. On my lunch break, I'd run to UPS or USPS to drop the orders. And eventually that just became more, but in some ways it was really good because it forced me to relinquish control a lot sooner than I probably would have, because I tend to like things done a certain way. And so I had to learn that good enough sometimes is good enough. And if it's 80% of what we were doing, that's okay. And then just kind of build and grow and build the team and, just take it. And now I'm probably looking at jumping into a bridge job just to alleviate some of the stress. The initial plan was to do this full time, but as you well know, it gets really expensive, and we're kind of in that phase of growth where our revenue is increasing rapidly, but so are our expenses. And so it's like, if I can, have a little bit of side money coming in, it'll probably be beneficial and help the company long-term, and look to jump back in probably a year or so.
Crazy, dude. I couldn't imagine starting while in the Army. I mean, I feel like 3 kids and a day job probably might be comparable. You got that kind of stuff going on too with the family and so forth. So that's it's a lot to balance and juggle. And the fact that you decided to learn how to sew yourself and all that stuff, I didn't do that. I was like,
I don't recommend it.
How much, from a percentage standpoint, this is not a business question. Well, maybe it is, but like, how much of the brand is hunt versus lift versus eat? Like, how much? You have 3 pillars. Like, Okayest Hunter has 1. We're okay. Like, there's nothing else to. It's Okayest Hunter. Like, it's one thing. I mean, we could talk about other stuff, but it's not in like our name as much. So like, there's probably a lot you could do inside of each one of these categories all by themselves. So what do you dedicate in terms of like content that goes out or messaging around? Like, maybe it's not exact, of course, but in your mind's eye, like, what is that? I mean, what's your audience like,
Yeah, so we have a good mix of the folks that, they see the lifestyle. And I never really anticipated the number of folks that really bought into this. And what's cool we're niched down just enough that it's kind of a narrow audience for our focus on what our customer avatar is, but then it's broad enough with all 3 pillars that we can do a lot with it. And that's been like my biggest challenge, as a lot of, if you quote unquote like visionary of the business, the entrepreneur is like, I'm like, oh, we can do this. And like the big lesson I've learned over the last year is like, let's narrow our focus, do what we do well, and, then build off of that. And as we, are able to add in those other things, because we went too wide too fast. I mean, totally. So, the hunting content wise, it pretty much is, I'd say 80% hunting, with the rest sprinkled in with the fitness. We don't do enough eating content. That's something we're fixing as we're getting ready to move and consolidate a bunch of our guys, actually have a physical location, which will be really nice. And then we're planning on ramping up our content across the board and have a more even balance, where we're kind of alternating between the hunting tips and tactics. And then also for like cooking, wild game, I really want to like dive into like the macro breakdown of what game is, because it's like one of the best protein sources you can have. Like when I'm sitting here and I'm trying to like actually track my protein, if I'm going with whitetail over beef, and I love beef, I grew up on a cattle farm, but like, I mean, it's not even, comparable. It's so much easier to consume enough protein by eating game versus it is, all these other sources. It's better than, chicken breast. So we want to dive into that. And then the fitness side. So, we got the apparel. That's kind of what we started as, me sewing patches on hats. Quickly did not want to do that. So we got, suppliers and everything. But then we had a lot of questions about programming, guys wanting to, get back into training or prep for the mountain. And so I'm not an expert in any of this. I'm self-taught on how I was training, how I was programming. So I brought one of my buddies in from the Army who had just got his personal training certifications, and he started building us training programs. And so we offer those now. We don't really market them hard. A lot of people just find them. We sell a good chunk, and they help folks out. And then long term, we do plan to expand on that side, but kind of keeping that focus narrow. We'd like to, right now they're a downloadable PDF. We're going to build an app where you can house all those so people can have a better interface, because who wants to print out a PDF and take it to the gym, right? Like, you want to have it on your phone, and most guys are like trying to read it on their phone, having to zoom in. So we want to fix that for them. But the real center of gravity for what we do is our team member program. And so we have a nationwide membership. We launched an app back in July that is kind of buggy. We're working on it. It's a bunch of hillbillies trying to get into the tech world, but that's really just where it's housed. The real value is like the people that are in it. So we do in-person events, hunts, meetups. It's nationwide and in Canada. We got we're right around 500 members right now, which is it's cool. I was not expecting that. That was kind of my antithesis of the brand ambassadorship. Like I said, I had done that before, and I didn't really like the model. It was very transactional. Like, here's 20% off and your discount code, or here's some free product and a discount code you can get an affiliate kickback on. And I really wanted to build a community around what we were doing. I think that there's a disconnect in modern society right now with both each other and the outdoor world. And when we look at the mental health problems that are really plaguing, the veteran side gets a lot of the publicity in the military, and which it should, because a lot of those problems are brought on by the policies of our government, which I won't deep dive into unless you really want to. But it's also an epidemic, especially with men, across the board on the civilian side. I mean, we have the male suicide rate is just insane right now. And I think a lot of that comes down from not having a tribe. And we have men and women as part of our group, but having people that will push you to be better, have that accountability, both in not like, I do a mindset call at the end of every month where I'm not talking anything about hunting. It's about living a purpose-driven life, vision mapping. I just did one on like getting out of personal debt. These lessons that I've learned both through my military career and business and just my overall life, I try to just give those back. And, long term, I'll bring in, once I talk about all the stuff that I know, at least somewhat, I'm going to bring in experts to talk about that. And we do that with our virtual seminars monthly too, where we do talk specifically about hunting, fitness, nutrition. And we bring in somebody from either the team or our ecosystem who has an expertise in that, and they come in and teach. So that's really like the center of gravity of what we do, is that community. The t-shirts are kind of just the window dressing. The training programs are part of that getting better. We have guys that join that have never hunted before. They need to lose 200 pounds. And this is an ecosystem that really like helps with that. You see guys that are like, oh, I've been in the team I was just talking to one of our guys who's been on the team since December, and he's down 17 pounds. And it's like, that's awesome. I mean, that's really what this is all about. And it's accountability for me. We're just talking about being on the road, like, just going to trade shows. I've not been training, but you got your buddies ribbing you about being fat. You're like, all right, I better get my ass to the gym and start cutting some weight.
I feel like I want to insert a joke there, but I don't want to be mean. You said a lot of powerful stuff there, so
insert away.
I mean, you're in the Army. You could take it. No, but I'm waiting for Derek or Greg to interject because they're here, and I'm like, I will just overtalk everybody. So
well, I'm just curious, Luke. You said the app, is that how the team is kind of communicating and building the community? Like, that's how they're connected most of the time?
Yeah, the app kind of houses it. We actually, because of all of our dev issues, we also utilize a third-party app called Signal. It's kind of like WhatsApp for messaging. And so every region has group chats, and those things are always going off. And so that's probably where 80% of the interactions happen, is on Signal, if they're not on in-person stuff. But the app it's kind of the placeholder until we can get a better product there. And that's one of the reasons why we're kind of just letting it organically grow through folks that are interested, because I don't feel like the app product is where it should be for us to start trying to push it on folks. Like, the overall value, like we have brand partners where they can get industry discounts and that sort of stuff. But what I really want is the value isn't like, okay, you can save 25% on something. The value is you can build real relationships with real people and go do the things that we're passionate about. Like we've had folks that are like, I've never hunted back east, or I've never hunted out west, and they're like swapping hunts, and they're like coming together around this. Or like, I need help with my nutrition. Who can, the guys that really dial that in are giving them advice. Like that's really what this is. And it's crazy. Like we do these events, and folks that have never met before in person, maybe they've met through the signal chats or online, or maybe they haven't, but then you watch them and it's like you think everybody was best friends for 10 years. It's because the value sets, there's something about folks that are passionate about fitness, passionate about hunting, passionate about the food that they're putting into their body, that attracts a really high value person. Like we used to interview every single member before they came on, but we just kept like being like, this is a really good dude, a really good gal. Like, do we need to do this? Plus it's a massive lift on what we're trying to do. And so we actually got rid of the interviews as a test. And I was like, I wonder if we're going to see an influx of folks that don't fit, and we haven't. And it's been really cool. I mean, I need to mention and be total transparency, it is paid. But with that, we try to invest back into our members through all those benefits. So I think that just that it's paid actually weeds out a lot of folks too, because this industry, I'm sure you guys see it, right? You get messages on Instagram where it's like, hey, send me your shirt, I'll rep it for you. And you're like, all right, dude.
Yeah, we get a lot of
yeah.
Yep.
Everybody's kind of wants their hand out, and they don't realize what goes into the back end of trying to build something. Like the ones that do, like, you get a discount with us. Like a lot of our team members don't even use it. It's really cool because they're like, I want to support this company because of, what we believe in your ethos. And it means a lot. Now I don't take it lightly because, I mean, as we all know, money right now is about as it's the least valuable it's ever been across the board, which makes it more valuable to give it away. So we want to make sure we're returning that value to our membership tenfold.
Yeah, it just got me thinking that like the community aspect, and through that app, like you may think that, now it's not working up to what it's supposed to be. But man, you look at like Go Wild has its own community, like the people who've been there. You think of like Greg, the Hunting Beast Forum, like back in the day, like that community, those people are so tight knit. And I'm sure there'll be people who are in this, and you're saying the app was clunky or terrible, we had to use Signal, but they're gonna be, oh, remember back in the day, like the OGs who used to communicate this way and we set this up. Like you're definitely already building that. You've already got that, that network of your OG people who are in it and like believe in what you're doing. And that's just going to continue to grow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny when you hear them talk to each other. It's like, which round of interviews were you on? And like, we got those OG guys that were on the very first ones. That was like, it was me, Derek, and Carter that did them. And Derek always asked a stupid joke or a stupid riddle. That was like his question, which if you guys would ever meet Derek, you'll be like, that fits. But they joke about that. They all remember the riddle and all that stuff. So it's cool. And it's I wanted to be really deliberate in the front end. And it's why I think the interviews were so key, was to make sure not only for them to tell us why they're good fits, but for us to tell them why they're, why we're good fits for them, right? Because this is a two-way street, and we want to make sure that our ethos, and they know why we're building it, what we're building it for. And I mean, those guys that came in that first wave, a lot of them are now either work, as part of the company, or they're regional leadership, or they're in positions. And it's cool to watch it evolve and grow, because we've had it for about 3 years now, and it's been really cool to watch it evolve. We were initially housed on a Facebook group, so now we have an app. So like, we're better than we were.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool. I think the accountability you get from a community is powerful. I'm doing like a push-up challenge for April, 100 push-ups a day. And I think the best way to get people to do things is just by being an example. Like I wouldn't tell anybody to do anything. I would just go do that thing and hope that maybe it inspires someone. And so this push-up thing, that's what happened to me. I saw some other guys that are doing some pretty cool things in their lives and are really kind of, they're squared away, if you will. And I saw they were doing this. I was like, yo, can I get in on this thing? Like, would you guys mind? No, not at all. Jump on in. So now I'm doing, I tag them, they tag me, and it is. I'm like, if I wasn't tagging them, and it's usually when they tag me in their set, then I'm like, shit, I have to do it. I can't leave them hanging. I don't know some of these guys that well. Some of them I don't know at all, because now it's already grown by a couple of people who I'm like, I have no clue who you are, but like, cool, we're doing this thing together. That does create some like fabric among people to have that, and that like that raising of the bar, that steel sharpening steel kind of thing. It's awesome to be a part of that, Anywho, Southern Pride Outdoors. I still have Eric's hat to ship out to him at the house. Honestly, forgot about it. That's okay. That's okay. This, by the way, your guys' shirts are incredibly comfortable. I I'm not typically a fan of 100% cotton shirts. I don't know what is different about the shirts you have, but this one that I'm wearing is very nice, and I do wear it quite often, actually. I think I have a couple of them, so I was gonna maybe give them to others, and I didn't. I'm sorry, guys.
Hell yeah. Glad to hear it stuck. Yeah, we have a mix, like we were talking about before the show. We've changed manufacturers and we're figuring out what most of our shirts are a cotton poly blend, but they feel all about the same. The way I don't know what they do. I don't usually like cotton either, but whatever they're doing on those is actually pretty good. So
Yeah, most of the cotton ones out there are just total trash. They shrink, and also my belly's hanging out. I'm like, man, why does it
Damn
always got to
shirt.
shrink up?
All the shirt.
Yeah, but no, the community thing's a big deal, and I could imagine, like, we just talked about Greg and Derek are going to go out west to do a hunt for blacktail in Oregon. Like, if there's someone else in the community that had done that, or is going to also do that, or is training to do that, that's like really powerful above and beyond what I just mentioned, because it's embarking on new experiences together, and that forges relationships in a way that I'm really sad that I can't go, because I'm really sad that these guys are going to bond without me. And not that they're going to bond without me. I would love to be a part of it. I'm really excited for them to go. I mean, maybe Greg's going to fart in a tent. It's going to suck, but that's also a funny memory that might happen. Like, that I will be equally sad and happy that I'm not a part of.
It won't be the first time. It won't be the last.
The last.
apart
I had
from
a, I had a,
farting sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, we just gotta shift into whatever this is gonna end up being from here forth. But I mean, we're 30 minutes in, so we got some time here. But I was on a Boundary Water area canoe trip with some buddies, and I had like bought this really fancy sleeping bag from REI, and I still have it. It's very nice, and it's probably not even that expensive. But back then I didn't have any money at all, so like it was probably a ton of money for me to get this thing. And I'm in this damn thing, and I got stuck in my own sleeping bag. Like, I couldn't get the zipper out. So I was like stuck. And it became this like perpetual funny situation. I was laughing because I knew outwardly like how funny this must have been. But meanwhile, I'm also panicking. I'm like, I literally can't get out of this thing, you guys. Like, this is a fucking problem. And then it got funnier and then scarier and funnier and scarier. And eventually I think I figured it out. Like, but the zipper got caught. You know how they like catch on the fabric?
Yeah.
Stupid. I don't know why the hell I felt the need to bring that memory up, but you meet people like that and do you have experiences like that. It's like, you just don't forget that kind of stuff. The fact that you're fostering a community that can translate into that is pretty cool. And as a guy that's developed an app for the hunting community, yeah, they're really fucking hard. Like, they're really, really hard. And they're actually mostly just a pain in the ass. Because guess what? A new phone's going to come out next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And guess what? In between those, there's going to be 20 fucking software updates to each of them. And you have to develop to that. You have to keep moving as the goalposts move. So it's a pain. Yeah, you got to have a full-time DevOps person or something like that. It's not fun, but keep fighting the good fight with that, because I think it's worth it.
And the thing that's kind of cool about like that is you kind of just are presenting the opportunity for people who are like-minded to get together, and like the app can get them there or like whatever, but like they're going to take it on their own. Like, I was just thinking back to the silly little trip I did over spring break. We went hog hunting in Texas, and I went with a guy we met at our Foam Fest shoot. Well, it was a BHA event. I think we shot, met this guy there with a buddy, and then he came to Foam Fest. So I met the guy twice. We talked, for an hour, and then we exchanged numbers, talk hunting a bunch. He says, hey, I'm going down to Texas. My one buddy bailed. Do you want to go with me? Yeah, sure. What the hell? Let's do it. So we load up, drive 17 hours down to Texas to stay with one of his buddies. And he's explained to me, I'm like, hey, I barely know you. What's your last name? I got to text my wife. She's worried. Who are we staying with in Texas? I don't even have a clue. And he goes, well, that's a funny story, because my wife thinks it's weird that I'm going with you because I barely know you, but I barely know this other guy either. I'm like, all right, let's hear what this story is.
A whole lot of leaps of faith.
Oh my gosh, dude, the group that was down there was really interesting. So Jonas is the guy I went with. He only started hunting 6 years ago, and he did a solo cow elk hunt, like a muzzleloader cow elk hunt in Wyoming. Went out there by himself, shot a cow elk, came back, awesome experience. And then on, I don't know what group it was, but on some hunting group, Western hunting group, blah, 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 like what you were talking about, Luke, that you've got going on. Somebody said, hey, I'm going to this unit in Wyoming in October. Has anyone been out there before? Tell me what to expect. My buddy Jonas messaged the guy and said, hey, you know, if you're looking for a tip, I was just out there. I'll help you out. So they start talking. The guy goes out there. Gentleman's name was Chad, and he shoots a 5x5 elk in the spot suggested by my buddy. So they're instant best friends. They go on a hunt together the next year in the same area, and that's who we're staying with in Texas. And it was just like, just the networking, like just exactly what you talked about, a community that we were a part of at the BHA event, and then this other community that was virtual, and everybody's just getting together to do what we love to do.
Yeah, the parallels are hilarious. So before we had the team in its current form, I had met Carter, who now is the podcast primary host. He met him through Instagram, and I was down at Fort Benning in Georgia, kind of Southwest Georgia, and he was in North Georgia. And he had been like, "Oh, dude, you should come up and hunt." And I was like, "All right, I'll come up." So I came up, and my wife's like, "You're going to meet some random guy up in North Georgia? Isn't that where they filmed Deliverance?"
I've had that happen a lot. Like,
Sure. Yeah. And then he like sent his wife away. You know, he was like, "Oh, she's with the family for the weekend," but really it was like he was making sure I wasn't like some serial killer. But now he's my daughter's, godfather, right? And it's like,
holy shit.
it's crazy. Like he's like, one of my best friends, and now like I was in the Army for 11 years. The only guys that I still maintain a really close relationship with are part of Hunt Lift Eat, and it just goes to there's something about this community that is so powerful, and it you always hear about the relationships you form in the military, and I'll say like a lot of it's just like trauma bonding, because you hate where you're at a lot of times and you hate what's going on, but you don't have anything at the core of the center for your passions that are a glue to pull you together. And like hunting, fitness, nutrition, that's really the glue that pulls in the right people. And it's been incredible. And I mean, I've met so many awesome people through this. I mean, we've had the team for 3 years, and we've only had really removed 3 people. And I think when you look at other memberships, and we look at a Facebook group and the toxicity on those, right? That one guy that reached out and was like, "Hey," he probably got that one guy that DM'd him, and like 15 guys that were like, "Fuck you." Like just ridiculous.
Well, the fact that we're all on this, like, I met Greg because he was a listener of the podcast, and then he became a co-host somewhere in there. And then Greg met Derek, although Derek was a guest on the podcast at one point in time. I don't remember if that was because of Greg or because of just in general. But then Greg went to Illinois with him. He's like, "This Derek guy's the salt of the earth. Like, you should talk to him. He should hang out with us." He came over to the studio when it was still like we just had hung drywall in here, and it was still fresh in this room. And I was like, "If you want to come here every Tuesday, you can." But and so that was a couple of years ago, and here we are. We're like, we talk. I think the most of us talk like daily. I think we drive our wives nuts, and I think our wives now talk too, which isn't probably the best thing. We did an episode on YouTube, "Wives Tell All," where our wives came down here and sat at the table and talked shit about us for an hour. That was pretty funny.
We were
upstairs. We were very nervous about that.
Oh, we were so scared.
We still don't know what was all said. I don't think our producer's ever going to share that information with us. But, and like Luke, you and I, we met at SHOT Show in January. Although I've seen you guys around on the interwebs and vice versa, I think. But then we got to talk, and we're like, man, are we in like a parallel universe here? We're at the same stage of growth.
Yep.
It seems. We have very similar dispositions. We talked about ego as the enemy when I was on your podcast. You talked about that. I even heard you mention it earlier in the show. Like, I had a lot of ego when I was younger. So did I. It's just we're forming bonds right now. It's happening.
Yep.
Like, people that are in the comments, Tony Cordero, we see him at events all the time. Levi Carey is now one of the hosts of a podcast on our network, Western Territory. It is insane. We're like the Red Rover, let anybody come over, and like they just glob on. We got this big glob of hunters, and we're a bunch of misfits, but it all works out okay. It's pretty cool.
Come be my friend. Hey, you, come over here.
You know what, though? We got good people. They're all good people. And if we were ever to get them all together and have a party, it'd be a pretty awesome party, I think.
Well, we've done the foam fest thing. Are you guys, so we have, similar to your business, we have, editorial, we have podcasts, we have merchandise, we have video, we have trade shows. We're doing event. I shouldn't say events. It's event because I'm only doing one because that's enough. It's hard enough. But we do an event called Foam Fest, which I'm in the midst of planning. And it's usually like the last week of August. I think it's going to be Labor Day this year, which might be a problem for some, or maybe that's a blessing. I'm not sure yet. But Our first year we had 30 people. Our second year we had 60, and it's a ton of fun. It's just a 3D course that we go and shoot, and we give some stuff away, and it's a good time. It was meant to be called Foam Fest because we were going to do it at a brewery our first year, and that kind of fell through. So foam, like we're killing foam, right? And then we're also drinking foam. Pretty clever.
I dig it. Real clever.
That was Greg's idea.
I want to jump in on, so Water Oak Forge just said, I think the honey and brander market just needed a regular guide channel. I agree 100%.
Yes.
You know, and that's, I mean, I've loved you guys from the first time I saw it, because like, we don't call ourselves the Okayest Hunter, but we are, like I always say, like I am a generalist and I'm not good at any of it. I'm not the most fit. I'm not the best hunter. I just hunt, like now, especially I get to hunt a lot, which is awesome. And I'm getting better as I go, but it's not about, the industry got so like inoculated with big animals and all these like hunts that a lot of these, not everybody, some guys are really good about not misrepresenting, but there's a lot of misrepresentation that even goes on within this industry. And when you get the veil gets pulled back on the curtain, it's like, what the hell, you know? And you sometimes you're like, I know too much. Like, I don't want to know this. Like, you know, you never meet your heroes type thing. And I've met a lot of great folks in the industry. I would say it's probably more well above, you know, what other industries are for the most amount of good folks.
Well,
There's
there's
a
like
lot
this
of
cool
bullshit.
kid club happening. Like every photo has to be so polished and so, and there's nothing wrong with that, because there's people that have a passion about taking photos and they're in photography, so they put out good work. But then brands gravitate towards that, and then there's this, you know, I'm in the industry, so I see it all. I'm part of some of it, you know, and by trade, and then also here. But there is this kind of cool kids club thing where it's so aspirational that, like, yeah, it almost feels like we need to deflate some of the ego or bring it back down to earth and just like, can we just have a freaking cold, cheap beer? Like, not everything has to be the IPA of the hunting world. Like, can we just have some cheap, cold beer for free? Can I not? Do I have to pay for this? Is someone else buying this one? Like, I can go in the cooler. Who else is buying this cooler? We're like leaving the bar to go to the cooler to drink the cheap free beer, you know, at the tailgate of the truck.
I love that analogy, man. And I think that's what we've needed. And, you know, there's been pockets of it, but Kiefer, who I'm with right now, he's one of my guys. We were just talking about, you know, business and plans. And he was just like, you know, we just want a place where hunters can be hunters. Can we just not get wrapped up in all this nonsense, get wrapped up in antler size and inches? And like, you know, from the dawn of time when humans became humans, we were sitting around a campfire. I mean, the first artistic depictions in the history of humanity were of hunts. And like that, I think that says something, right? And when we look back on that, it's like, why can't we just hunt to hunt? Like, why does it matter if you're killing big shit? And I even see it with some of the younger guys that we've got. And it's like, I kill big animals all the time. It's like, yeah, that's cool. And I'm glad you're a good hunter, but who are you as a person? Like, what values do you have? And I'm not trying to, you know, slam on them because these are good guys, but it's like, it's that young ego, right? And like, if I was a better hunter when I was younger, I would have been wrapped up in all that. I was just lucky enough in a way that I sucked. So like, I wasn't killing big shit. Killed a lot of does.
You're in the army, man. You had a career.
Little ones.
Yeah. A lot of, you know, basket 8s and does was really what I killed a lot of when I was younger. And so now I'm at a point where if I do kill a good animal, sure, I'm excited. Like, yeah, do I want to kill, you know, my first elk and it's a 360-inch bull? Absolutely. But like, am I going to shoot that legal bull when I have the opportunity? You're damn right. And if it's a raghorn or not, it doesn't change the hunt for me. Is this a hunt? Is this an animal that gets me excited? Am I doing cool shit with cool people? That's really the foundation of what this is. And like, and is it making me a better person outside of hunting? Because there's so many valuable lessons you can learn. I mean, patience, empathy, like all these things that get like wrap up into what we're doing. And I think if we forget that and it becomes all about antler size or all about making money, like as a business, we have to make money or we can't do this, but it's not necessarily just about that. Like we can be profitable and still have a mission set and core values and ethos that we stand by.
Well said, man.
Very well said.
Yeah.
And I think we all go through that phase when you're younger, or maybe you're older and your ego is still playing a part. I know I used to love trying to do it on my own all the time. And like, I just wanted to prove to myself, like, I'm going to do this. I can do this. But now it's just, like you said, doing cool shit with cool people. It becomes about who you can call after you have one or who you're out with, and like just sharing the good news with that community that's tight to you that you know you're going to get the text back like, dude, that's awesome. You need help. It becomes so much more about that community aspect. The cavemen around the campfire sharing the loins with your buddy. It becomes so much more about that than the specific animal like you were talking about.
I don't know if it was on your guys' podcast. I think I had done 3 that day. And and so I don't if this is you, just tell me, but somebody around that period of time, whenever I was on your show, had said something to me that struck a chord, and I just riff other people's shit all the time and regurgitate as my own. If I remember enough, I'll give credit because I'm not trying to thieve it. But it was like if I could talk to a caveman and that caveman could talk to me, and like I could go back in time, and they come forth, they would be so impressed with crossbows and broadheads and compounds and camo and gear. Like, wow, you can hunt warm, you can shoot that far. Like, holy shit, this is amazing. And if we could talk to them, we would just be like, can you tell me the story when you speared that like wild, like whatever thing it was? Like, I wouldn't care about the weapon at all. I just care about the story. And so there is this, like, to your point, those drawings that exist on the cave walls or what have you, like Jared Scheffler said this when I had him on a couple weeks ago, or he didn't say it. He said it on his show, on his TV show, the latest season. He said, like, if I'm excited enough about the hunt, I'll kill the deer. It doesn't have to be a big deer for me to kill it. I just need to be excited about the hunt. I thought it was a really cool. He just said it like organic, like it just came out of his mouth. Like, he wasn't like on a camera on an interview. Like, it just happened in the moment. And his camera guy was like, "Were you gonna shoot that one? It wasn't that big." He's like, "Dude, if I get excited about the hunt, I'm killing it." And to hear a guy like that who's killed bigger deer than, I mean, most of us, I think, I was like, if that doesn't give you permission as a hunter to feel the need to not have to do that for the sake of the antlers, like, I don't know what else you're looking for, short of the message we put out. But I get excited about most hunts, so that's why most deer are going to go down in my presence, because it's not about the deer, it's about the hunt. And the hunts are damn near, they're freaking exciting for me, I might be younger at heart. To Derek's point, I might still be trying to like prove it to myself to some degree. I'll add, and I'll stop talking. Some part of me feels, as a representative of the brand of the Okayest Hunter, I want to show that it can be done and we don't have to be assholes about it. Like, I almost want to get so good that we can say, like, to everyone else that's doing it, that I don't want them to be able to still put us down. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of the ego there for me in that sense of it. Like,
Don't worry, they'll find a way to put us down. It's just how they
like, if you were a really good fighter, you know what I mean? Like, just to know that you could kick someone's ass, or if you actually did lock horns with them, like, that you could put them down. You don't have to feel worried that they're actually gonna, like, oh, you're actually gonna beat me up. You'd be like, no, I can carry my own. Like, I could go kill a big buck, but I don't have to. I could beat you up, but I don't have to.
Look over your shoulders, buddy. You've already done it. You've done it.
But that's the message. There's some part of me that has that message. I don't know. Anyway, Luke, what's your thought?
No, I get that completely. And it's hard to, like, we've talked about ego several times. Like, I know that within myself, that's a problem, or can be a problem. And so I try to, maybe it's artificial, but I try to keep myself humble. And hunting does that for me, because it seems like as soon as I think I've got it all figured out, something goes wrong, right? Like, my 2 mule deer hunts last year did not go the way I would have intended, but I ended up with 2 dead mule deer and it was good, and that's at the end state is like, yeah, one was a forky and one was a 3x4. None of them were studs, but it's also my first year hunting mule deer. Well, my first year killing mule deer. I've hunted mule deer for a couple of years now, but it was like still a great season. And I don't care if I compare them to somebody else, but I'm hunting my hunt for me, for my reasons, which at the end of the day is really the experiences I have in the field and to put food on the table for myself and my family. And if I let go of all that other shit, it doesn't, because I get it. I'm sure you guys maybe less so, because you filter that out by the name of your brand, but I'll get these, especially younger guys, they want to send all their pictures of their bucks, which is cool. I think it's awesome that they're proud, but they'll be like, what's the biggest buck you've ever killed? And I'm like, probably like a 120 something. Like, I don't know. I've never measured one, man. And I haven't killed that many big bucks. Some of it's opportunity. Some of it's just, a lot of times don't hold out, and I'm later in life, I'm getting more disciplined with trying to manage the properties that I have back home, but it's not about that at all for me. It's about those experiences, about the camp. Like, I went through a phase early in my Western hunting where I really liked the solitude of hunting by myself. And I still like that. I'm a big, like, hunt alone and then go back to camp. But I didn't like being in camp by myself. I'm like, this kind of sucks. Like, I want to have those guys and gals around me. I get more excited. My wife's killed 2 does now, stone cold. Just dumped them. Doesn't get emotional at all. And I'm sitting there like jacked, and I'm like, if I'm at my home, back home on my family farm, and I'm shooting a does like grocery shopping, like it's not real difficult. It's Southwest Virginia, we're covered up in them, but when my wife's hunting, like I'm like nervous, and she's getting ready for the shot, and it's and I've got a 2.5-year-old son, I've got a 8-month-old daughter, and like as I look and I kind of forecast what that's going to look like, I'm so excited for that phase. Water Oak Forge, jump back in with hunts with my kids and my friends. Like, yeah, that's really what this really is all about, is doing those things and doing cool shit with cool people, and then being able to pass the lessons learned and teach. And it comes with repetition. And I think we're impeding a lot of our young hunters, because I've met so many guys, they want to jump straight into archery, they want to straight into archery elk. And you can learn and shorten your learning curve and have success. There's no doubt about it. But a lot of people underestimate the time it takes for that. I mean, you can always get lucky. There's always a chance when you're out there, and you can have a close encounter and you put the repetition in, you can kill an animal. But I'm always like, let's like settle into some expectation management. Like maybe you don't start out with archery elk. That's probably one of the harder hunts that you can attainably do outside of like sheep and goat. Why don't you start out with little whitetail, hogs, or maybe even antelope or mule deer with a rifle, so you can just get repetitions at what hunting is and not hamstring yourself from the start. And if you're diehard passionate, that's the only way you want to hunt, like no problem. But just know that it might take you 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, I read on these forums and Facebook posts, it's like, been hunting 9 years, finally punched a tag. And I'm like, dude, you're more patient than I am. Like, I would not do that. And there's nothing like, there's something to be said for like repetition.
How long it took me, but it wasn't because of patience.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it takes what it takes, and props to everybody for sticking it out. But I think, especially when you're trying to get kids into it, getting them some lower hanging fruit, something where they can get some positive reinforcement faster, is going to get them to get that bug, versus going out on the mountain and just getting their, ass kicked and then for no reward. And some kids are more mature than others and they can see some of that value. But yeah, I think there's something to be said too for like repetition with killing, with whatever weapon system you're utilizing. Like, you can't replicate that. You can, like, we do stress shoots as part of Mountain Archery Fest. We call it the Mountain Fitness Challenge. We get guys' heart rates redlined, and then they're shooting arrows. And it's hilarious to see some of these guys. They just like, their brains turn off. And it's like, that's the best simulation, but it's still not the same. It's still not the same. And so getting some reps with whatever.
When I go to draw back on a buck, my brain is turning off. That's what I'll tell Greg next time I miss.
It is. I mean, and it's a natural. I mean, you get. I mean, if you know some of the physiology behind it, like you're getting this massive adrenaline dump. It's like your fine motor skills go out the window. Like how many folks actually do the Joel Turner thing when they're shooting a buck, or any animal for that matter, actually have a closed loop the entire time? They don't. You're probably punching unless you've just done the repetition over and over and over and over.
Oh yeah,
and have that skill set.
Definitely.
It's natural. And like I've started doing the tactic game, like film through my scope, and I'll watch my crosshairs, and you're like, I got lucky on that one. I timed that loop just right, instead of actually being slow and steady and going through my full shot process. And I've killed a lot of animals at this point in my life, and I still will make those mistakes. And so I think repetition and having expectation management and knowing that there isn't this pressure that we see, like, a lot of these guys are only posting the good stories. They're only posting the success, and they've been doing it for a long time. I've been saving all my unpunched tags. So when I have that season that I'm going to inevitably have, that's like that perfect season, and everything comes together and everybody's like, oh, this is awesome. It's like, yeah, look at this stack of unpunched tags. And this is the expectation. And this is what I put in the years and repetition of doing this to get here. And I think that that's the story we're not telling within the industry.
I think we're getting better at it as an industry. There's more of that happening. I'll give a little bit of credit there, but there's still, I think the TV shit is just the shit by and large. Like if you're
the worst.
And I think that's getting better too. Like I just talked to our producer, Jace Martinetto with Martinetto Media. He does one of the main shows he does is Jake Break Hollow, and they're on, I think, the Pursuit channel or something. I know because he's involved that it's not what is going to typically exist on that platform. So just hearing that all by itself tells me, oh, cool. Maybe there's some better shit coming to that platform. But I don't know who has cable. I don't know who's watching that still. It's like the older hunters, maybe. Like I don't really know.
Older demographic for sure.
Yeah, and it's still around. It's not, things don't just straight up die. People are like, oh, radio's dead. Oh, TV's dead. Oh, print's dead. Like none of these things die. they just get a little bit buried for the new thing to come through, but they still exist in their own right. And what ends up happening, I want to talk business for a second, is like the cost to get onto those platforms, whether as a production piece or as like an advertising piece, lowers because people have moved on. So then people flock back to it because it's affordable, and then it comes back up again. It's like that's why you see things come. Oh, print's hot again. Field and Streams launching a new magazine again. Like Field Ethos got a magazine. Everyone's got a magazine again. People are putting out records, like literal freaking records, and getting record players. Greg, I know you have one, but it's not because you think you're hip. Like you've always just enjoyed it. You've had one, but some other people the pendulums are swinging. So these things don't go away. They just come back and ebb and flow. But when they come back, that's when it's probably worth paying attention because it's coming back with a nuance to it, this different feel of like, now we're going to put our narrative and our spin on this thing that we grew up with because like we think it needs this. We think it needs that. It'll be really interesting to see what our kids do. To be like, Dad, your shit's weird. We're going to do it this way and on this platform. Like it's going to continue to evolve and change over time. And then grandkids are going to do that again to their parents. And we're going to be 90 or whatever, 110 if we live long, like things are going. Maybe, I don't know. Be like, wow, back in my day, we were doing podcasts. Well, who knows what's going to be out then? Let's just hope and pray that hunting is still around and stories are still being told and like memories are still being made.
It'll be a little chip that goes in right into your brain.
Yeah, I'll watch that one. Got it.
Yeah, got it.
Weird little side note here. One of my students who's a freshman, 15-year-old boy, photography student of mine, real good, creative kid, just bought a typewriter off of eBay because he likes to do some creative writing. He's bringing me hand-typed pieces he's writing. He's like, hey, proofread this. Mark it up. I like it like that. It's his thing, man.
Well, I think that the more digital the world goes, which is obviously going that way very quickly. Kiefer and I were talking about this right before I jumped on, is there's going to be, and maybe it's niche, but it's a niche worth exploring. And even from a business side, where people, and you see it with social media, we're the most connected we've ever been. And we thought that when we opened up team interviews, we were going to add on like 25 folks, and then we were going to have maybe 50 on the top end. We had 150 folks, and we were going to leave it open for 2 weeks. We had 150 folks reach out within 2 days, and we didn't know what we were going to do. We were super overwhelmed because we, didn't know what we didn't know. But when we look at that, it's like, oh, there's a demand for this. And it's because we're so disconnected on a personal level that this interpersonal connection and these real, true, actual relationships matter even more. And I think as you go through the whole gamut, like I wouldn't even be shocked, we're going to start seeing, and it's happening a little bit, but like photos and stills on Instagram are starting to come back around. And like, even that little shift, it's really nuanced, but we want the real thing. We want to know the true stories of what's going on. And that's where Ranella cracked the nut, was like, he was the only guy there for a while in the hunting space that was like, had an episode where it's him walking around, narrating philosophically as he killed nothing or saw nothing. It's like, oh, that's actually what hunting is. That's actually most of hunting. The vast majority is not seeing a thing.
Yeah.
And
it's just hard to get people to bite on that from an entertainment standpoint. It's like there's no
But it worked.
culmination, so he did a good job with that for sure.
Yeah.
Who's that? What was that? There's a movie clip I've been seeing with a bearded dude. I forget the actor's name. But he's like, it's all pixie dust. It's all digital dust. Like all this stuff on the internet, it doesn't exist anywhere. All the pictures of my kids are on Facebook or whatever. Like I don't have them printed. People used to print things. I have photo books I go look at for me as a kid. What are my kids going to look at? Logging into their dad's Facebook account? Like, again, that's why Polaroids have made a comeback, because people want to physically see something. I don't know why that matters that much, but I think stories are the one thing that is timeless. Going back to your caveman example and looking at photos and so forth, like stories are important to people. We cherish them. We love a good story. The movies are always going to be a thing because it's one of the best ways to share a story is in cinematic ways. Like, and going to a movie theater, you're just sitting for a movie could be 4 hours long. You'll watch it if it's a good story. Like Lord of the Rings, how long is that fucking thing? But you watched it when you were young because it was a hell of a story. If you get a good enough story put together, written, audio, Joe Rogan podcasts are 3-4 hours long. Books are super long. They're 400 pages. Like movies are long. Some of these YouTube things are long. Like I don't know what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about nothing other than a good story matters, and no better story comes from anything other than hunting, in my opinion. Those are the best stories, and those are the stories that we tell. Like, we tell the same stories at deer camp every fucking year. It's the same story. I'm like, God, we've all heard these stories, but it's so good to hear them again. And I almost think like deer camp is like this archive of VHSs or DVDs that are in our minds. Like, you are watching it again. You're hearing the same story again because it's like watching that movie again. Like, some movies are worth watching, like Step Brothers. I'll watch that movie 1,000 times. It doesn't get old. I'll hear the same story from my dad 1,000 times. It doesn't get old. I'm happy to hear it every year. And it's probably good to hear it once a year. It's probably good to read certain books once a year or twice a year, you know?
No, I agree completely. I mean, I go to a camp down in Texas. It's all old vets, and I got invited, randomly one time, and been showing up ever. Oh, there's a stack of mule deer out in front of our yard right now. Did you see them, Kiefer? But yeah, it's every time I go down there with these old guys, it's the same stories and I'm like, well, I'll tell mine again, but I love it. I look forward to that camp every year because I'm hearing these stories, both military stories. These guys all, came up during, the 90s and then into GWAT, and they're doing different stuff. And it's awesome, and I think back to the camps that I was in when I was younger, and my son was in camp when he was 2 months old, right? And he's growing up around it. And I love that because he's going to learn from the stories of, high value men that have come before him. And that's how we've learned forever. I mean, the history of humanity, the vast majority of it is captured in nothing but stories that were passed on through the tribes, down. There's the oral history of that tribe, that oral history of that area. And, now we have different platforms where we can capture it. And that's where I think, you would have thought as radio started to nosedive that we were done with this. We only wanted visual, but people will listen to podcasts. I'll do it when going to a trade show, a 16-hour drive, and I'll just podcast after podcast after podcast. And it's like, we still can visualize it and have that imagination and see it and let them paint the picture. And Meat Eater has content now that's only audiobook, and it's just guys sitting around telling stories. That's so cool. And I don't think we're ever going to get rid of that. And so having the ability to tell a story, I think, is really, really important. And a lot of the stories need to have a valuable lesson. And that one story of you killing that monster buck where everything went right, you can learn a lot more about all this other hunts where everything went wrong. And that's where that true lesson is. And like you said, the industry is getting better, but I think it's because there's so much of a demand from these guys that have gotten into it late, and COVID was a catalyst for a lot of that, or from folks that are like, I'm sick and tired of only seeing, and that shit's cool. We watched 4 hours of big mule deer videos when we were at this last show. I still like that stuff, but I also like to hear the story where the guys had failure, the real true
relatable. You see yourself in failure more than success half the
for
time.
sure.
Like, oh, that happened to me. Oh shit. Yep,
I've done that. Yep, for sure. I need to remember not to do that one. Try to learn from other failure. And business is no different. I honestly consume more business content than I do hunting, but it's the same thing. What are the stories of these hyper successful guys? And then because it frames perspective for you, because it's so easy to get in your head, whether it's hunting, business, whatever. Listening to Evan Hafer from Black Rifle, talking about the stress of not being able to pay payroll and bills and crawling under his desk because he couldn't go in and face his wife. It's like, well, okay, I get that. I didn't crawl under my desk, but I wanted.
I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to crawl under my desk.
Yeah, you get to that point, and knowing it's like why I think me and you hit it off is because we're talking about all this stuff, and it's like, one, it's shared value sets, but then two, it's, oh shit, we're in the same place, we're having the same problems, and it's nice to hear that from somebody else, and you're not alone, and you're like, oh, I'm not the only one in the hunting industry that's experiencing all these, or in any industry.
Yeah, we started the hardest businesses in the hardest industry.
Yeah, it's a tiny niche.
But no one told me that until 3 years in. Like, Eric, that was really difficult. I'm like, yeah, I get it now. I'm in it.
Yeah, the majority of hunters are not the SCI, DSC guys, and that's definitely not who our niche is targeted at. And then on top of that, you're like, so now you're trying to sell stuff to folks that are, blue collar, hardworking guys, which I think there needs to be a service for, but it's harder to make money. Like, selling to rich people is way easier, and so, but I think that I wouldn't change it, even though I know now I could stop this business, start another one, make way more money. I'm too passionate about those relationships, the community, and what we're building. And I think you guys are doing a great job on that too. It's awesome. Like, I love the, forky antler. Like, that's so fucking cool.
No, thank you for the comment, and right back.
One thing I want to throw in real quick before we dive in off the business deep end is
bring us back on the rails.
No, it was talking about what you guys were mentioning before with the telling stories and, the story that you messed up on. I was thinking like, as fathers, and Luke, you're talking about raising your son up in your hunting camp. My dad, is a huge mentor of mine. And one thing that I think he absolutely nailed that probably helps me fit in with everything that Eric's been doing and Greg has been doing is he's got up at our cabin, we got like the plaque wall. So like all the smaller bucks, the little bucks, every single one he's ever killed, he's kept and he's put on a plaque. Spikes. I mean, dozens of spikes. And he writes the story of everyone on the back. And when I was a kid,
That's awesome.
you could ask him about it and he would tell you the full story. And he said, every deer you kill deserves a story. If you pulled the trigger, that deer deserves to be told about. So I remember being a kid and man, I could just look up, 1986 bow. And I knew the story because I heard it so many times repeated. And my dad never skimped on telling a story of a small buck or, a doe. It was just as important as every other story because there was a learning piece to it. And I think that was something I definitely want to like do with my kids. And a lot of people throw those smaller bucks in the shed or in the back or in a pile in the side. And it's like, man, you killed it. Give that thing the story. Like it can teach you just as much as killing any other animal.
In that wall in that cabin, you're going to be able to write a couple books with the amount of stories that are on that wall.
Here's a few stories.
It's a wonderful thing. And I will kind of finish it off with this is eventually someday your tribe is not going to tell those stories anymore. All of our tribes people are passing away. The property gets sold because somebody doesn't want to take that on anymore or whatever. So continue to go every year if you can and continue to listen to those same old stories because eventually that voice is going to quit telling that story. And you're going to have to try and remember it up here and hopefully you can.
Don't make me cry, Greg. Jesus Christ.
Reality, bro.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the neat thing about, we'll see how the digital world goes. Like maybe this stuff won't exist anymore, but I think I've said on this show, like when I die, because not if, it's when, like that's the only guarantee in this life is we're not getting out alive. My kids can go watch this or they can go listen to it. It's pretty neat. Like I worked at a cell phone company in college and people would call in when someone had died and they'd asked to preserve the voicemails they had left because their voice is no longer in the world. And that's something we could do. Something I was able to do for some people at the cell phone company. We could archive those, save them, give them to them as MP3 files, and they would then have those forever. And even one of the gifts we gave my in-laws when my wife's grandma passed away a couple of years ago, actually because of COVID, we took a QR code and printed it, and we put one of her favorite sayings on a framed image with a WAV file to represent it. And then if you scan the QR code to this day, it plays the voicemail she left for her mom. And it's pretty special. It's still in her parents' house right now. I can go play and you can hear her voice. And that's something that leaves this world that we don't think about. And so to Greg's point, those stories, it's not just the story, it's who's telling the story and how they tell the story. My buddy Joel, nobody can tell a story like Joel can. The way he tells the story or the way he tells a joke, I can't do it the way he does it. It's not the same. If I told the same story, I'd be like, yeah, I can't tell it. He's got to be here. He's the one that has to tell that story. If I'm around, he's like, no, Eric has to tell that story from this POV, like his perspective. And like when you have multiple people in the same setting, all telling the same story, everyone's got their own unique vantage point of it. And that's always kind of fun too. My dad tells a story. Well, I had to hit the deck because Joel and Jesse were dropping deer right in front of me. I hit the deck. These deer came through. So everyone's got their unique POV on it. And so when we're all together at deer camp, those stories take a new shape altogether because like it's not just hearing from my dad's POV, it's hearing it from everyone's perspective all at once. And I've often said we go to the same woods every year for gun, but the woods kind of come to life. If I could describe it, almost be like holographs are popping up and like the woods are kind of like a movie scene would show like an old scene coming back to life. That's what it feels like. And I can see it in my mind. I remember every year, over every year. And every year you go back, you're kind of like excited. You're almost like, is this going to be the year we make another epic story? And I don't mean epic in like dramatic because we killed a big buck. It's like epic because we shit the bed. Those are usually the ones that get told the most, the failing ones. But good stuff, man. I don't know. It's pretty cool. All this hunting stuff. It's kind of why we like doing the podcast, meeting cool people like you, sharing hunting stories. And I finished my bourbon, so that's done.
No, can't agree more. I mean, I think back to, my grandfather, and like I wish, I don't even know, I didn't have a podcast before he passed, but it's like, how awesome would it have been? And he wasn't even a hunter. He shot deer being a farmer, but like, I mean, he was more into the agricultural side. And it's like, how awesome though. I mean, Vietnam veteran, to just get him on a podcast and let him talk for 4 hours about the stories he could tell. I mean, the house he was born in is still on our farm. It's all run down. We're probably gonna have to tear it down soon. But like, that guy saw the evolution of the world in a way that like we could never see. And it would have been extremely, incredible to have that and be able to listen back to it. I mean, not to get too morbid, but when I was deploying to Eastern Europe, right as the invasion was happening into Ukraine, and I was like, we're going to be the forward most armor unit. I'm a company commander. Like, this could not end well. And so I started making videos for my son, and it's like for every birthday
Oh,
up until he was 18. But like having that ability, right, to capture those stories, to tell that, to give him, I was like, I mean, I had this moment of like sheer panic of like somebody else is going to raise my son, maybe, or they'll just be my wife, whatever happens. But how do I there's things in this world that only I can teach my son, and that's really important. And there's a gravity to that. And it's like, I have got to come up with a way to do this. And we have that. And it's cool. And that's kind of the flip side of like social media gets like all this negativity because it can be such a bad thing, but it is an incredible tool, and to take it back more positive. It's like, that's how, I knew who you guys were. That's who you knew, saw us around. That's how I've met, my daughter's godfather. That's how I met, most of my best friends, like the guy I'm hanging out with now. Like, it's really cool to be able to leverage it for that. And if we are consistently a positive voice and not getting wrapped up in this brand or that brand or these antlers or those antlers, and just focus on the core of what got all of us into the first place, which is meeting awesome people, sitting around a campfire and hunting. It kind of boils down to that.
That was perfect.
That's a wrap. That's good shit right there.
That was perfect.
Luke, thanks for being on the show, man. Where do people find you guys?
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. It's an honor to come on here. I love what you guys are doing. If you guys are interested, I mean, we're the most active on Instagram at Hunt Lift Eat Official. We do have the podcast, the Hunt Lift Eat podcast, and the Fish Lift Eat podcast. Fish Lift Eat podcast is in a hiatus as we kind of restructure some things. But website's huntlifteat.com. If you want to, grab a t-shirt, we'd appreciate the support. No stress either way. And then the team is also through that. If you guys are interested there, we launched a YouTube channel a few months ago, and we're trying to kind of ramp up that. Podcasts are on there. And then on top of that, we're producing a little more long form content too. So we've got some new videos, long form videos in the works. We dropped an elk hunt that we didn't kill an elk. I killed a mule deer, but it wasn't that's also what I was thinking. It's like, we had a whole 16-minute video of the name of the video is Elk Don't Exist, because that's what we kept saying. That was the joke, even though we were seeing them. But it was like, they're just a mirage. Like you see them, you go get them, and then they're not there anymore. And I think that's really cool, and we're always going to be authentic. It's one of our core pillars on our value set for a company is I don't manufacture content. What we tell is the story that we tell. And I think you guys do the same. And I love that. We need more of that. And luckily we have some brands across the board that are really seeing that and doing it. And I've got hope for the industry. Colorado, we're in a dogfight right now. And that would be like another thing. I know you guys have a nationwide following, is like, pay attention to what's going on with this fight. There's organizations like how I don't remember the website, but just Google how, and you can get in there and get involved, write senators, write congressmen. And then if you guys are interested in the fight in Colorado, if you ever want to come out to Colorado, go to look up the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. And, if you want to contribute anywhere, those guys Dan Gates is doing great stuff. He'd be a good guest for you guys to talk about the lion fight right now. They just released wolves. I mean, Colorado's kind of the front line right now for taking away hunting rights, and they're eroding at the low-hanging fruit, but there's a bigger plan at large. So we've got to be active as hunters. So if you guys can get involved, we'd appreciate it, because we need to unite. We need to come together. There's too much infighting.
To.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked that it's Colorado, because there's an abundance of wildlife and hunting activity that goes on out there. I'm just shocked, of all places, that's where it would be.
Well, that's why it's going to be such a big win if they can start eroding. We already lost spring bear back in the 90s. Now we have too many bears. You can't really hunt them effectively. They can't give away bear tags. You get one for pennies on the dollar if you buy an elk tag. And then, they're going to go do the same thing with lions. And then at a certain point, we've got wolves, lions, and bears that aren't being managed correctly. We're going to see elk, moose, deer populations continue to drop. Now, what do we say for hunters? Well, we have to manage the populations or they're going to get diseased. Well, if they've got enough predators on the landscape, then we're not necessary from a management standpoint. And then it actually becomes a legit biological reason for us not to hunt, or not to hunt as much and to reduce it. And like, they're playing a long game and we can't see past this in front of our face. And they're winning, if we're being totally honest, and it's a long fight for them. So we've got to come together around this lifestyle. And even if you don't have any interest in lion hunting, know that they're coming for the next thing and the next thing. The end state is that there's no more hunting across the United States.
I feel that, man. I mean, our mission is so heavily tied into like getting the neck to not bite the head off, and to make sure that we're on lock as a community so we can go have those fights collectively. And boy, that's an uphill battle in and of itself to get ourselves to like align. It's a challenge because there's so much ego and bashing and shaming that goes on for things that are just like, does it really matter? Does it really matter what weapon I use or how I, like, come on. I think that part's important to consider going to those fights in a concerted effort. But good message. Happy to jump in there. If you had some intros that you want to make to us, I'm totally open to it, and we'd love to bring some folks on from that category. We have some fun episodes on deck coming up. I don't really ever do a good job talking about who's next or what's. It's kind of like people show up on Tuesday, like, what are we getting today, Eric? Like, what are we getting today? Like, no one, even you guys don't even know. I don't even freaking know half the time. Like, I don't know what's going on. I knew we had Luke on today. We had to reschedule or whatever, but we have some DNR wardens coming on at some point soon. We got some good guests lined up. We got some good topics lined up. Some turkey stuff happening, but we're a generalist podcast, so we'll talk about the whole gamut of things. And I kind of like it that way. We're not, you might find an episode here that might help you kill a big mature buck. You might find an episode here that you get really trashed listening to. You might find an episode here that you find some really great stories, or you felt like you fell in love with this brand called Hunt Lift Eat. There's a whole gambit of things here. So you never know what you're going to get on any week of the Okayest Hunter podcast, and that's the kind of fun of it. So thanks everybody for listening. Have a good week. Enjoy everything you're doing.